Hey GameBrew fans, thanks for listening to the GameBrew podcast. If you like what we're doing, or maybe if this is even your first time listening to the podcast, come on over to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever social media you fancy, and hang out with us and see what we're up to. You can find us at all of the above at the GameBrew. If you want to be a little bit more personal in your interactions with us, and maybe chat, maybe even do some gaming a little bit, come on over to our Discord at bit.ly/discobrew. If you have a great idea for a show, the Discord is where you can drop that to us. There's a channel for that. Or you can just email us at thegamebrew@gmail.com. Finally, the GameBrew continues to get better and better because of your feedback and great ideas that you share with us. The best way to do that, if you haven't already, is to drop us a review on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you get your podcasts from. They're super helpful, and we really appreciate hearing from you. And if you want to get your game on and throw a little change towards the GameBrew so we can keep bringing you great content, hop on over to bit.ly/GameBrew. That's our Humble Bundle affiliate link. And aside from your money going to some great charities, a small bit goes to us to help us upkeep the show. Thanks a lot for listening. Let's get on with the show.
Hello and welcome to episode 62 of the GameBrew podcast. I am your host, Ian, Michael Jordan Richard, and I'm here with Chris, Scotty Pippen Wrights.
He's heating up!
Dan, Dennis Rodman Rotz. Say something inappropriate about North Korea.
He would never say anything inappropriate about North Korea.
Will BJ Armstrong Shell. He's on fire! And Allison Phil Jackson Vandevender.
I literally have no idea who these people are except Dennis Rodman.
NBA Jam!
Yeah, well, and also like the 90s Chicago Bulls players.
They were kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and Phil Jackson was the coach, so I made you the coach.
Oh,
coach.
That's appropriate.
So get it together.
Because I would never play. Yeah. So
on the first half of the podcast, we will scratch our chins and wonder why there aren't any good extreme sports games these days. And in the second half, we'll talk about some weird game mechanics that ended up being great. But first, it's time for our beer. Chris, what are we drinking this week?
We are drinking an extreme beer while we talk about extreme sports.
Extreme!
It's Stone Ruination Double IPA 2.0.
Sans filter.
Sans filter.
It's brewed in either Richmond or California, depending on, I guess, maybe what coast. I don't know. I don't know if one is brewed in one or the other, but there are two Stone breweries.
It has a funky smell. Oh,
really?
And it's very happy on the nose.
Yeah, we've had Stone before. I think we've had Arrogant Bastard from them, and they're pretty well known for being very aggressively hopped and very bitter.
Yeah, they go big or they go home.
Yeah, and this is their double. So
it's also got a veritable book on the back.
It does. It's a little bit grassy on the nose. And it's got like a dirty laundry funk to it as well, which doesn't turn me off at all. I say that in the most positive way possible.
I remember the dorm room in college.
Oh wow!
Ooh,
yeah, it's bitter.
No, I actually don't feel like it's that bitter. It's definitely not a juicy IPA. It's very much along the lines like of a standard India Pale Ale. And it's nice and like the color on it's really beautiful. And man, that's delicious.
I feel like I've drifted more towards the Nippas recently, so
yeah,
this is not quite in my wheelhouse right now. But I like it. I don't hate it. That's for sure.
Me likey.
Also, I like the advertising they have on their caps. It says they have @Stone Brewing and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. So
yeah,
Pinterest.
We'll be adding them as well.
It's a heavy beer, but it's also got like a crispness to it. It's like a.
Is it a merry crispness?
Ho, ho, ho.
I'm sorry, that one hit me late.
Will, what are you drinking, man? You have something else over
It's also from Stone. It's called Chocoveza, or at least that's how I think you pronounce it.
I think I would go with the soft X, the Chocoveza.
Chocoveza.
It is an imperial stout inspired by Mexican hot chocolate. And the first time I tried this beer, I did not like it. Like it's like heartburn inducing. But this time through, it is spicy. Like there's like chocolate. There's definitely like there's a heat. I don't want to say a Tabasco kind of heat, but there's some like peppers in here and Pasilla peppers, whatever those are. There's coffee in here and there's an essence of vanilla, which is what I really like. But I'm finding this time through, if I sip it a little bit, it doesn't make me want to projectile vomit across the room. Like it's not. If you take a big swig, it's pretty harsh.
That's good.
Yeah,
it's good to not projectile vomit.
Yeah, especially on a podcast. Allison, speaking of projectile vomit, what is that horrendously colored beverage you have in that cup there?
That's a nice blue color.
Okay.
That's a scary
nice blue
blue.
color.
That is a blue raspberry blue that I could get behind.
If you added some cream to that, it would be Tatooine milk blue.
This is GameBrew blue.
Did you know that blue raspberry is not a thing?
We don't talk about that.
I've never seen a blue raspberry in my life.
That's my favorite artificial flavor. So this is called the GTA 5, and Dan found it for me to drink today.
Did.
And I'm going to go through what's in it, and all be terrified with me about how I'm going to be in the second half.
Listen, I'm already terrified.
You're going to do a great job.
It has gin, vodka.
So far, so good. Okay.
Gin, vodka, tequila.
Oh, we're quickly going downhill.
Blue curacao.
That's for the blue.
Yeah, and then
for the color.
And then lemon juice and Sprite.
And Sprite.
And the amount of alcohol to non-alcohol ratio is not as even as it should be. I grabbed Patron, Absolute, and Hendrix to put in this.
I mean,
right.
You did it right, you know? I don't know anything about vodka, but Patron and Hendrix are quality gins and tequilas.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of, so I sipped it while you guys were drinking, and it tastes like Patron. It tastes like straight up just Patron with some lemon, and then afterwards I'm getting the gin. But I don't taste anything else. So this should be
You add some Sprite to it. Add some Sprite to it. Cut it a little bit.
I mean, I put how much it says to put in there, but yes, I'm probably going to have to cut it or we're not going to make it through this.
To be honest, you may not taste things for a few days after that.
I believe in you. I just don't want you to be a quitter.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
See, this is why Will and I got in trouble when he lived in Harrisonburg, because we would just like one up each other on everything.
We did.
Okay.
You know what they say? If the drink does fit, you must not quit.
Quit?
Yeah. Thank you for that.
That's a well-known saying.
Okay, yeah. Abraham Lincoln said that.
Yeah, I believe it was Abraham Lincoln at the the Chris
Alamo.
Rock concert. Yeah.
Yeah. In the basement of the Alamo.
They were holding the Chris Rock concert. Right, I got it. Mm-hmm.
Are you insinuating that there's a grunge Alamo, like an Alamo Underground?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is making
sure.
This is history.
Speaking of history, Dan, you've been playing Fire Emblem Three Houses, and that game sort of forms its own history, doesn't it?
It does.
As far as I understand it, because there's like generations of characters.
Kind of. So I have started playing it. I'm probably about 6 hours in. But so far the way that it starts is that like you and your dad are like just hanging out in your house, and then and then like 3 people in like primary colored garb show up outside of your there's like a person wearing yellow, a person wearing blue, and a person wearing red. So it's there you go. There's 3 houses. Get it?
If you mate the yellow and the blue one, do they spit out a green child?
Green? I don't know. We don't know yet. But in the game, there's this aspect where you have to pick one of the houses. Like you go to this school. It's like a monastery place, and they're training people to be knights for this monastery. And there's these 3 different houses that are like 3 different types of people. There's like the red, which are more like rule following nobles. There's the blue, which is like a mix of very heroic warriors and nobles. And then there's the yellow house, which is a bunch of nobles and commoners. That's the one I chose, which is weird because it's like it's more ranged fighters. If you ever played Fire Emblem, you know, there's like, you know, it's kind of like rock, paper, scissors. There's, certain things that are more powerful against other things.
Cool.
So you chose Hufflepuff then?
I chose the Hufflepuff of houses. Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet.
Just because the other two were kind of straightforward, and I was like, I want to do something that's a little bit different. I usually go with big smashy boys, and instead I was like, I'm going to go with the not big smashy boys and see how it turns out. So far, so good.
Nice.
I'm not going to lie.
but-
If there were a video game that came out that placed you, like a Harry Potter game that placed you in the role of a Hufflepuff character, like a first person, like Hufflepuff rampage
You're about to
shooter
say
type
something
thing.
Not
like-
nice.
Well, no, I would play it. I would play it. Like, I would love a Hufflepuff rampager.
I don't think
That's-
Hufflepuffs are
those
like
are-
naturally suited to rampage.
Yeah, to rampaging. Yeah.
Like, unless we're talking about like rampaging through like just making everybody feel
Friendship.
nice about themselves.
Rampaging
Rampaging
some
through
garden.
friendship.
Yeah, it's a
Going through a
friendship
garden real hard.
rampage.
Yeah.
It's like a rampage through a farmer's market.
Speaking of rampages, Allison, you're back to League of Legends. Have you wanted to go on any since you started playing that game again?
I haven't played too much lately, but yeah, I've been jumping into that for a couple of reasons. They launched a Teamfight Tactics variant in League of Legends, so I've been playing that. It's like I think there's a name for it, but I can't think of what it's called. Other games have it, like some MOBAs. Dota has it.
Is it auto chess?
Auto chess. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, I
that's
heard
what
about
it
that.
is.
What is auto chess?
So it's basically you have a board where you place your characters and they all do whatever they do, and some of them buff each other, and you have to strategize where you're placing them and why you're placing the characters down you are, and then they just auto fight each other. Your opponent does the same thing, and there's a bunch of people you're playing against, so you just randomly get paired with one of the, I don't remember how many are in there, 8 people. So that's fun, and that's something new they've done. I honestly think they shouldn't have released ranked with it yet. It's really buggy and too early for that, and so I'm only playing ranked because why not? But also the game's just not balanced enough for that yet, I feel like. And then they're launching Clash this week on the 19th, which is basically where you get a team and you fight other teams in a tournament style, but within the game. And you can get prizes with your team and recognition for winning. So that's pretty cool. They betaed it last year, and now they're finally actually launching it. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's been interesting.
Christopher.
It's been
Sorry,
interesting, all the rise of auto chess that's coming up. I know Dota 2 also has one. I think there's a couple others as well.
Yeah, Dota.
Interesting.
Dota did it like first with the MOBAs, I think. So
They always do.
Classic.
Chris, what about you, man?
I've been pretty busy with some life stuff going on, but in between that, I picked up. So one of my friends at work has been telling me about like Valkyria Chronicles.
Right, of course.
Do you know what that is?
Valkyria Chronicles is like it's kind of like halfway between a JRPG and a turn-based strategy game based in World War I. Did I do that right?
Kind of, yeah. So
that's right.
it's like XCOM, but it's not as like you're not moving to squares, but it's kind of similar combat.
Yeah.
It definitely has like kind of a JRPG / anime influence. I think there's also an anime of it now.
Yes, there is.
But it does a lot with relationships of the people in your squad. It's set during kind of World War II-ish, but
Okay.
it's like Europe, but it's not Europe, but it is
Right.
Europe.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. It kind of gives me some of that strategy vibe that I was looking for, and for especially on the Switch, it's something I can pick up and do a couple episodes. It's also interesting that each chapter is kind of a series of different like scenes where like or cutscenes where you'll see the characters kind of talk with each other and develop those relationships, and then you'll have a fight, and each fight will be a little bit different, kind of like XCOM. So I've been enjoying it so far. I haven't gotten too deep into it, but it was on sale for like $12, which is pretty good for a Switch game.
Nice.
So I picked it up, and I've been enjoying it so far. I'll probably have more on it the next time.
Very good, very good. Will, you've been posting a lot about this newfangled, I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it Pokemon card game?
Close enough. It's actually Poke-E-Mon.
Oh,
It's a long E. vowel sound.
Got it.
Yeah. I think the kids are really going to like this one. Adults like me, not so much. Like I feel like if I had grown up playing more Pokemon, I would really enjoy this experience more than what I am. But having played like Magic and gotten into that at a deeper level, this feels very childlike and very basic and very simplistic. And there are cool things you can do with it. And there is a little bit of depth to, if you get into deck building and some strategizations that you can do, but it doesn't even scratch the surface, doesn't make a dent into what you can do if you dive into something that's got more depth and breadth to it, like Magic does. So
it's definitely
cool, but too kid-like.
Yeah, it's definitely a starter TCG. Like whenever I played that when I was a 11-year-old, I could understand it and play it, and I was like, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you go
for
to
me,
the
it was
Magic
between
stuff.
that and Pogs, and I already had a Slammer, so I went with Pogs.
Oh, I played the crap out of
Throwing it back with the fog.
So for me, I finished The Room 3, which I was inspired to play because I recently purchased an iPad, so I was playing The Room 3.
Did you finish it, you said?
Yeah, it's finished.
So there's the sound.
Did you like it?
I did like it. I liked it a lot.
Oh, cool.
I really liked it when I played it earlier this year.
Yeah. I now just need to go pick up the next one and do that. I also picked up another game for my iPad called Hidden Folks, which I cannot strongly enough recommend. It is basically if you imagine Where's Waldo, except instead of just trying to find one person, you're trying to find a lot of different people in each level, and it's all black and white, but it's really the illustration style is super charming, and the sound is what really makes this game. So all of the ambient sounds, all of the sounds that the people make, all the sounds that the animal makes, all the sounds that like when you tap on water or buildings or tents or whatever, it's all voiced by the people who develop the game.
That's cool.
Oh, that's fun.
What is it called? Hidden
Folks.
He posted it in the Discord. If anyone wants to see it, check it there.
Yeah.
And it's like $4 on the Apple Store, and it's great. I've been playing it like when I'm going to bed and just like poking around at stuff, and it's like zoop, zoop. And like,
is it a game that would work on a phone, or does it kind of need to be an iPad to be bigger?
It's nice that it's bigger, so you can kind of like look around the screen. If I were them, I probably wouldn't release it on phone. You can also get it on PC. So if you want to do that, you can do that. But that's more or less what I've been up to, and just trying to get through Dragon Quest Builders 2. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the first topic today. We want to know what happened to all the extreme sports games. It used to be that back in the day, NES, SNES, and even beyond that, there were really wonderful, extreme, non-realistic sports games that a ton of people played. So a lot of examples come to mind, but obviously MDA Jam, games like Super Dodgeball on the NES, the Tony Hawk games, obviously, for the early PlayStations. And as of late, they've kind of dried up. So what's the deal? That's what we're digging into for the first half. This was came out of a conversation with a friend of ours. What's his screen name? I don't know if I want to use his real name.
That's a great question.
It's like it starts with an R.
He goes by Rochester, but you can just say Tyler.
Okay, yeah. So our friend Tyler kind of asked this question. We thought it was an interesting one. So the first thing that I wanted to ask is, why do we think there were so many extreme sports games that were successful in the 90s and early 2000s?
I think it's because that was like the first of its era. Like, we'd had sports games before, but not to that level of interaction and control and cool shit that you could do. Like, I mean, Excite Bike is an extreme sport because you're on a dirt bike and you make jumps, but it's 2D. And this is one of the first instances I remember that was really engaging at a hardcore sport.
What game are you thinking of whenever you think about that?
Oh, sorry. I'm thinking of like Tony Hawk.
Like the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series?
Yeah. Not that there weren't like don't know, maybe Wave Racer came before that. I don't remember. But Tony Hawk was just badass, and it was fast paced, and it was just super engaging, and it brought in music that was very relevant to our generation when we were playing that. And I feel like that really had an engrossing effect on us as well.
I think the thing that made it like kind of speak to us on a level was because we kind of were the generation where we went from there was arcade stuff, and then we could also have stuff at home. So I think that what these extreme sports like NBA Jams or NFL Blitz, like all the different like types of soccer games, I think they kind of took that arcade Wave Racer. They kind of took that arcade mentality and they kind of put it on a console so that then you could play with your friends and do goofy stuff, because you don't just want to sit in an arcade and just play regular football, you know, because that would be, you just play regular football then. Yeah, but you could do it as like mutants, or you could like body slam your friends every time that you knocked them down with 8 billion people, or like the patented all out blitz defense where you just switch characters and press the tackle button over and over again in NFL Blitz and then see if it gets somebody.
Part of me wonders if it's just not generational and cultural in a lot of ways too, because so like in 95, GameBrew fact. Actually, it's not, because I didn't look it up. 95, I think, was when the X Games came out, if you guys remember.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And it was like, we had the Olympics before, but we didn't have the X Games, which were the Xtreme games. And it kind of like opened that door, because then you got the Tony Hawks, you got the Dave Mirra BMX games, you got, you know, all these kind of, those were the gateways in my opinion. Yeah, SSX. Because they had those snowboarding trick competitions now and things like that, where it was part of like the popular culture too. So of course it kind of made its way into games. Whereas I don't hear people really talking about the Olympics or X Games anymore as much. So I feel like culturally we're not doing that interest now.
I think there's been still talk about, you know, the Olympics, and you sometimes see like Mario and Sonic at the Olympics comes out around the same time as the Olympics sometimes.
Well, sure.
Steep came out during the last Winter Olympics, I think, or maybe right before that or something like that. But that was like the last game that I can think of that really, or at least the last big game that I can think of that really kind of had some of that extreme sports feel. But I also think that there's just been such a push for realism in a lot of today's games that they want everything to be as realistic as possible, and so
in today's sports games, to be particular.
Today's sports game, yeah.
So we're talking about like FIFA, we're talking about NBA 2K, we're talking about Madden, yeah.
And I think that some of the unrealistic and kind of shock like boom shakalaka stuff has come from games like Borderlands and games from like Rage 2,
Unreal Tournament
thing, or like even Halo had like kind of the Kilimanjaro
Killtacular.
What else? The other thing that I think is interesting about this and kind of pairs with what Allison was saying is that I also feel like it was part of the culture of games of the time and not just of like the culture of society at the time, because games were much more like, it was a thing among many that you did, where now some people are primarily gamers and that's their thing. And I feel like back when, you know, we had NES and Super Nintendo, there was this natural like this natural intersection between what the things that you did in the real world and the things that you did in video games. And now, if you're like a sports person, you probably just play more sports. And if you're a video game person, then you probably just play more video games. And so there's less of that crossover between the two, which I think is interesting. The other thing is I do want to come back to Steep, because it seemed like it was going to be something that sort of reinvigorated the genre. Ubisoft billed it as that, but it never really made a dent. So I'm wondering if those of us have played it kind of know why.
It's fun. I picked it up. They gave it out for free like a couple months ago, just I think for like the winter or something like that, or like right before the summer. And it's kind of it's basically like The Crew, except you're on a mountain with snowboards and skis and things
Suits.
like that, and wingsuits and stuff like that. So it seems like a game that's a good diversion to do with your friends, but isn't that great by itself.
So there's just not enough depth to it, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
It's
pretty
steep, but it's not deep.
nice.
At least the price wasn't
Oh no.
steep.
Yes,
I'm gonna.
nice.
Oh, God. We should have a bad joke counter. Also, just saying. Sorry.
Something I just realized. So Blitz, NHL Hits, MLB Slugfest, and NBA Jam were all done by Midway, which is now defunct.
Yeah.
Right.
So all of those series are now no longer owned by anyone, really.
Right.
One of the studios became NetherRealms, which does Mortal Kombat, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Extreme fighting.
Yeah,
It's definitely extreme.
it's extreme something, but it's just kind of a bummer that no one's really taken up the mantle of those games, because even just if there was like an indie version, I mean, I guess there's kind of Warhammer's Blood Bowl, which is kind of like that, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's more strategy than
Right.
like arcadey, I guess.
You could also make arguments for a couple of other things. Like Mario Tennis is kind of an extreme it is definitely an extreme version of tennis, but it's also like not really tennis, and a lot of the Nintendo things.
That's a good point.
Mario Strikers was very much like an extreme sports kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
But like there have also been other recent failures in extreme sports, notably NBA Playgrounds and NBA Playgrounds 2. Did you guys know anything about these games?
Not even a little bit.
So they came out like at this. They were licensed, obviously, because they have the NBA title in them. Licensed under the NBA title, and they very much have a similar aesthetic to NBA Jam, but they're just bad, filled with microtransactions, and the mechanics don't feel good.
Is it by 2K?
It is by 2K.
Classic.
Yeah.
That's a problem. There are a lot of complaints about NBA 2K for the same reason, that there's just a lot of microtransactions that kind of bog down the game, an otherwise really good game.
Didn't they also put ads in it in the most recent one? Yeah. Put required ads for stuff. 2K is
about that nickel and diamond life.
I want to go back, because Will was talking about the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series earlier, and about like the soundtrack and stuff like that. And as soon as anybody talks about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I don't really think about the game so much as I do about the music that would play from it. I looked up the soundtrack just so I could, because it's got like the Police Truck by the Dead Kennedys. It's got Superman by Goldfinger. It's got Primus on there.
That was the first time I heard Primus.
Jerry was a race car driver. He drove for goddamn fans. I love
Primus was so good.
That game exposed a lot of music to a lot of people.
And in a way where it was like, and again in that like arcadey sort of way where it's just like you only have like 2 minutes to go and listen to this song and do as many crazy things as you can and collect skate or like a bunch of paint cans. And it was
that game I feel like that game spawned offshoots, like, because wasn't there a BMX version, and then there was Crazy Taxi, which was most definitely kind of a copy of that.
I wouldn't call Crazy Taxi a copy of it, really.
No.
Because Crazy Taxi was around, I think, before.
But it was extreme taxiing.
Okay. I feel like it was.
But that's still in the vein, like, that was an arcade game, and then they were just like, oh, hey, it's on console now, which is, again, it was great. I love whenever they do that stuff, because you can, like, sit there, you don't have to worry about the progression. All you have to do is go in and play it, and it's fun, and then you do it. Now, of course, like, Tony Hawk, you could, be Wolverine or Spider-Man or... There was one of them you could do that. I forget which one it was, though.
Well, that's cool. And that's kind of it too. Like those games coming out back then. There's a lot of reasons that those soundtracks stand out, but one of them is those songs were part of, things people would listen to while they skateboarded. Maybe there was definitely a lot of music that you associate with people who did certain things, and those songs, they felt right. So they did really well with that. But also, like back then, you kind of had the radio, or if you waited and downloaded a song off your 56K modem on Napster or LimeWire, or went out and bought a CD. Like in a lot of ways, that was one of the few ways you can hear new songs without just like happening upon them on the radio. And those are songs that you're not really going to hear on the radio, maybe. So that was really smart in a lot of ways to get that music out to people. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why that music always stands out really, really harshly to me. Like, I think about the songs more than I think about the game a lot of times.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys think we'll see a resurgence of these games? I'm kind of on board with Allison. She mentioned that these sports are not as culturally relevant these days, or at least a lot of what these
especially.
extreme sports were, like the biking and the skating and that sort of thing. And so I'd love to see like a hybrid game where the football player carries a Louisville Slugger to clear the line, but I don't know that we're going to see a resurgence.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask the same question. Do you guys think that you want to see these resurgences of like either the skater extreme games or like the more aggressive, violent versions of other sports games? Go ahead, Dan.
I'd rather see more like of the like pro skater stuff, like the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater things, because I kind of miss the arcadiness of them. And I really liked. Okay, so the skate games were okay. You know, Skate. Do you remember playing those at all?
Yeah, Skate 2. Yeah,
Skate 3,
SK8.
Yeah.
Yep.
But those games were good, but again, it aired towards that realism stuff where they were like making you do stuff with the right stick. And instead I was just like, no, I just want to do a 1790, off of a ramp, while hitting some pigeons into a like little manual, and get 1 billion points for it. I want the points. Give me the points.
I don't think I want to see these games again. I'm gonna go there.
What?
Okay. But hear me out. Hear me out.
Dare you?
Here's why.
let's clutch our chests.
Here's why. They're not going to be done right. In this environment in video games now, all they're going to do is microtransaction the ever-living shit out of these games. You are going to have to buy every song you want to play. You're going to have to buy every headband you want to put on your character. You're going to have to, like, it's not going to be fun anymore. Like, the fun of that game was customizing, you know, this fun, cool character and going out there and doing these things. I wanted to be a skateboarder so bad, you have no idea. I tried and I hurt myself real bad and have a scar on my knee to prove it. Like, I couldn't do it. So this was a way for me to kind of be that person without actually hurting myself repeatedly. And it's just not going to be fun anymore because they're going to beat it to death. What I want is for them to re-release these games in a way I can easily play them. I would be really happy to get these games back on a console so I can play them again. Jet Moto.
Yes.
Jet Set Radio.
Jet Set Radio was so good.
Loved that game. You know, the Tony Hawk's, I loved the BMX games, and it was really rooted in the 90s for me, I guess. So I don't want to see them again because in current era, they're going to do them wrong. But the 90s versions were so right. I need them. You know,
I think the modern version of these types of games we have right now is Rocket League. But that's really the only one that's really
for
doing
sure.
That. I would like to see kind of more of those slugfest hits, NBA Jam, Blitz games, because there's not really anything like that right now.
True.
Yeah.
Nothing that scratches that itch for me right now. And I would like to see that. I would love to see an indie developer do that. Maybe you could have your own soundtracks that you put your own music into the game. That'd be cool. And it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be the best graphics ever. It just has to be fun, and it has to have some stylish and have maybe a little bit of RPG development. So like you can customize your characters a little bit and have them, you know, hit harder or catch a ball better or something like that. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
You hit a note there, Chris, that I think it like reverberates really well with me. Like there's something just so like visceral and just raw about those games, and you're doing your thing and that's all you're focused on. I like that there was no character development or very minimal, and there was no like extra stuff that you were doing. It's just like Dan said, I'm going to hit this 1080 and land on the rail and grind down and then ollie off at the end. And it was just straightforward.
You like the arcadiness.
Raw gameplay. And it was just excellent.
I actually am going to disagree with you directly.
What?
Well, so
chest clutch.
Here's what I want to see. I really want to see these type of games continue to evolve, because over the course of gaming, as it were, we've started with extreme games and they've kind of maintained, but in a different way. So we can think about all the way from something like Excitebike to where we have something like Rocket League now. So there's always been this connection to sport in gaming, and I think it's a really strong and natural connection. And when you look at groundbreaking things like Wii Sports or the Tony Hawk games, I think there's room to improve and to improvise on that history with games. I'd love to see an extreme ping pong or something where you're doing backflips and slowing time. You know what I mean? I would love to see I'd love to see a new Pilot Wings kind of thing where some of it is jumping out of airplanes and going through all the hoops as you're coming down. I just think there's with the modern technology that we have and the variety of different control schemes that are available to game developers these days, I don't see any reason why you couldn't develop some really cool, not quite real sports, thinking about extreme sports games.
Ian, I love how you're the exact opposite of me. You are the yin to my yang. 'Cause I'm sitting here saying, they're going to ruin this, don't touch it, let's just let it die where it is. And you're the exact opposite where you're I see a future. And you're such a
it's gotta be fancy.
Perfect paladin with your hopes and dreams. And I'm so jaded.
Ian makes a good point. If these are going to make a comeback, we're a generation or two detached now.
Right.
Microtransactions, paying per song or per whatever loot box, whatever is
headband
is common. That's just what happens now. That's what kids do.
That's why I was saying I want an indie
so that there is none of that temptation.
I would love that.
For it.
Rocket League is incredibly successful, and I think we've all sunk many hours into it combined, and there's microtransactions all over that game. It doesn't make it any less fun.
I actually did not know that there were microtransactions on that. I've never looked that far into it. I've only played when you guys played. Really?
But it's all cosmetic.
Yeah, it's all cosmetic stuff. There is a game that I just saw recently called Descenders. It's called Descenders Extreme Procedural Free Riding, where there's 4 of you on mountain bikes, and you start at the top of a thing, and the goal is to get to the bottom, where the thing is, and you can do tricks and stuff, but but you can also you have a certain amount of lives. So if you die, then you can be dead for the whole thing until somebody gets to a place where they can revive you. Which is pretty interesting, but also there's bonus objectives and stuff you can do to get more lives.
Cool.
It's pretty fun looking.
There was also a really great snowboarding game for
1080.
It was for iPad iPhone.
No idea.
God, what was it called?
Android Girl.
It's super beautiful too.
Whoa.
Was it that one where you have to escape from the Yeti that you played on your browser whenever you were?
I mean,
Ski Down?
2000? Ski Down?
I do love that game though. Alto's Odyssey. It's one of the best reviewed games on phones. I think that's an example of the genre evolving along with the times, but still having something really interesting to offer. Right? It's basically an extreme sports game meets Journey.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah. Give me more weird combinations like that. All right. Well, I feel pretty good about it. Guys, we just had a great conversation about this.
I think we did too.
We are awesome.
I didn't insult anyone once. So
proud of you.
So
we're doing something
you are
wrong.
So bald. I can't believe you.
Thank you. I also just want to express my deep and abiding love for a game called Super Dodgeball for NES. It's on the Virtual Console on Switch. If you're paying for online services for Switch, you already own it. Go find it. Go find a sibling to play it with and play it. You will not be disappointed. It lives up to the hype.
All right.
All right. So that is the end of the first half. When we come back, we're going to talk about weird mechanics. Stick with us. Hello and welcome back to the second half of the GameBrew podcast, episode 62. How's the drinks treating us? Allison, I see that your cup is now filled with clear liquid, which is an interesting change from the earlier hyper blue.
Yeah, I'm empty. It was a lot, and now
No,
I'm drunk.
you are full. The glass was empty.
Okay. Fair enough. My cup runneth empty, and Allison runneth full. So this should be a great second half, guys.
That means that the podcast is going to runneth over.
Okay, let me be clear though. That was a really good drink for me. Like,
Yeah?
I liked it. Thank you, Dan. Solid choice. I'm also probably a low-key alcoholic. I don't advise this for everyone. Like,
I was going to say,
it was-
don't just casually drink these.
Yeah, this is definitely it's called GTA 5, so we all knew what we were expecting from it. And it's a fuck you up drink. And it is definitely like really sour because of the lime and everything that's in it. So, it was good. It's my favorite thing. I love sour stuff. I love bitter stuff. So this was a solid drink for me. Thank you. Good choice.
Yeah.
Are
we
you going to make that at MagFest then?
Yes.
Oh,
I
God.
don't know if I
Great
can walk
idea.
around
We
like
just-
this.
Like,
No,
we could just...
we'll just put it in some pouches and throw it in the backpack. And go to
Yeah,
town.
no problem.
Yeah.
Or we could do
we'll,
it-
We'll play slap the bag with
Okay.
it.
Yeah, let's be
Yes.
clear. Allison was very sober all of MagFest, so I don't know if I could do not
This
being
one,
sober.
not the next one.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's do it. Go hard.
How are we feeling about the Xtreme IPA?
It's,
Bitter, yo.
yeah, I'm still on the first one because I'm trying to, like, as I'm drinking through it, it's like, it's gotten a little bit warmer and it's hard to drink it when it's warmer because it gets
Oh.
most of that bitter flavor comes out.
Ice cubes, man.
In your
No shame.
beer?
No
What
shame.
the fuck is
No
wrong
shame.
with you?
That sounds like a
No shame.
That sounds
shame,
like a-
100% shame.
terrible country song.
Yeah, I
Ice
wasn't gonna
cubes
tell.
in my beer.
It's the Old Town Road cover.
I also am still on my first beer because there's coffee in it, and I got to go to bed at some point tonight. And it's just really hard to drink fast. This is like a front porch
It almost
sipping
sounds
beer.
like a dessert beer where you could like share it with 3 or 4 other people. and
It
be
really
happy.
kind of is. It does have, despite the spiciness, it does have some chocolate and vanilla that cuts through, and it's really nice.
Notes.
Chocolate, vanilla, spicy. That's a little bit weird. It's a
A
little.
little extreme.
No, it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit weird. And speaking of weird things, the history of video games is filled with weird mechanics. Some of them were really great. Think about Mario's butt smash. Doesn't make any sense. Still freaking awesome. And some of them were not. But today we're going to celebrate some really great weird video game mechanics. So I just want to go around and kind of have everybody shout out one that they love.
First, I want to say you said celibate, like celibate.
Celebrate is what I meant.
Want to sell
Oh
that?
man, have you guys played A Link Between
Yes.
Worlds? So,
No.
for the uninitiated, A Link Between Worlds was a Zelda game that was out for the 3DS. So obviously a 3D title, but what was really cool about it was that there were kind of sections where you would kind of, like a painting, go against the wall and kind of use that to get past into different places that you wouldn't normally have been able to go to.
Yeah.
Kind of like in Super Mario Odyssey, where there are 2D sections that you kind of have to go through. It becomes a platformer instead of being a 3D world. And I feel like Nintendo, I took that success from A Link Between Worlds and moved it to Super Mario Odyssey because of how well it just worked. It just because they have been previously both mediums, I think people are already able to, and willing to go to those mediums more readily than if they hadn't been before.
Yeah, and that 2D to 3D, 3D to 2D swap is a mechanic that's been used in other games really successfully as well. The Paper Mario series, and then also Fez. Did anybody play Fez?
Fez,
I did
yeah.
not play
'cause
Fez.
It had
Where
like
it's like,
the
it's
environment moves around and you can jump between the things that it moves.
Based
'cause
off
it's 3D.
perspective, yeah.
yeah, and some of the puzzle solving is that it's like not quite 3D, kind of 2D. So, yeah, that's a really cool mechanic that I didn't even think about, Chris. And I remember playing Fez and thinking like, this is great. So yeah, that's a cool one. Dan, do you got one?
Some of my favorite things are like the odd control scheme games where it makes it so like hard to play or most like ridiculous. You have to put your hands in ridiculous ways. Like
Bennett Foddy.
Like Bennett Foddy's Getting Over It, where it's like just ridiculously difficult. Also more so games like Octodad, or I Am Bread, where it's like you don't control a thing, you just control parts of a thing to try and do stuff. Octodad specifically because it's just like you just have these 4 wiggly limbs that you have to move around to like unlock keys, and you have to throw stuff, and it's like really hard to do.
Goat Simulator does that too with the tongue.
Yep, that
and Surgeon Simulator as well is really good about controlling parts of a thing. Like you have control over each of the fingers of a hand, but not over the hand as a whole.
Yeah.
Dan, what is it about the super funky controls? Because this is something that could be really frustrating too.
It could be, but it's the fact that the game is about that, because they give you really menial tasks. They make the game being like, hey, it's almost like a puzzle. Try and figure out how to do this thing with like these obstacles in the way. So it's with like Surgeon Simulator, it's like, yeah, sure. Or all of the VR titles that are out there. Like there's like Job Simulator or like Spy Simulator, any of those simulator games where it's, you have to figure out these puzzles that are really easy if you were to be able to do them just by saying, oh yeah, I just put this and that, and I put this blue block in the blue hole. But then it's also like, okay, but you can only use like 2 fingers, or like, you and your 2 friends need to do it, and you each are separate limbs while you're trying to move this thing around. Or Overcooked, which is another one where it's like, it's not particularly difficult to control, but it's just that you have to wrangle everybody in and be like, okay, so you're cutting the veggies, you're frying the meat, and then I'm going to be over here in this thing because it keeps moving back and forth, between the places where we need to cook the meat and then put the veggies in and assemble all of the hamburgers that we need to put up there.
There's actually an interesting connection between Overcooked and games like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes or Space Team, if anyone has played that for iPhone and Android, where like really the game itself is pretty minimal. You're pushing buttons or you're adjusting something. The actual game that's being played is communicate across the table or across the digital table, which is a really incredibly deep mechanic because it's just people talking to each other. And yet it's like, it's part of the game, but it exists outside the game. And I think that's really neat too. Speaking of mechanics that exist outside the game, Will, I know you played a game a little bit called Blackwatch, which I think has a really cool mechanic to it, and I'm wondering if you could talk about that.
Blackwatch is cool, and I don't know that they're still updating it, although occasionally I'll get some emails. And when you get the emails, it treats you, well, the premise of the whole game is it treats you like you're an agent of this organization, and your job is to like solve clandestine shit. And so you got a lot of puzzles to solve, and you'll do actual research, or in some cases, if you're a high enough tier in the game system, which I think you have to subscribe to something for that. I don't remember quite how to achieve that level, but you actually get sent on real life missions where you have to go to a place and do a thing and get some information like in Meat Space World to play the game. And that's really cool. I didn't do that part, but the part that I did do required a lot of research, and in some cases, like opening up different files on my computer and like editing those files to gain more information, and then taking that into the other file and doing the same thing. And that was a really cool mechanic. I was messing around with shit that I would normally mess around with on my computer, but in a much, much more interesting way. And that was super cool. I loved that experience.
That kind of reminds me of 2 different games. So talking about the manipulation of files reminds me of Hacknet, which which is like a game where you're like kind of, I'm using air quotes here, being a hacker, and so it kind of guides you how to do things, and like you eventually kind of start remembering how to do certain commands and do different things. So like
it uses basic DOS commands for a lot of its interface structure. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And it kind of gets you to do something that you're not normally supposed to do or not normally doing in normal life. It also reminded me, Will's comment also reminded me of games like Ingress and Pokemon Go, where you're going out and actually going physically to those places, which with video games you never really did before until those games. Ingress was really popular on Ellicott City Main Street because there's so many stops and so many different locations that could be taken over, and which in turn became gyms and points of interest for Pokemon Go because they're made by the same company, so they use the same things. But without like those types of games, we would still be just, hanging out in our houses playing video games and not going out and exploring and doing those types of things.
Inside boys and outside boys.
Yeah, I think the importance of Pokemon Go and games like it, Ingress, and also the new Wizarding World of Harry Potter game, I think the importance of those can't be overstated because I remember when Pokemon Go came out and I went outside to do Pokemon Go just in random place, and everyone was doing it. Literally everyone was doing it, and I cannot remember the last.
It was a phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot remember the last time that there was something that turned video games into such an everybody social experience, and that's something that had an effect just beyond games.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. I also want to point out real quick, Doki Doki Literature Club is another example of where Game Player interacts with file editing.
Does it?
Towards the end.
Apparently.
Towards the end it does.
In what way?
We shouldn't really. It's gonna hashtag spoilers. Hashtag spoilers.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I also, since Pokemon came up, I also wanted to bring up a game called Monster Rancher, which was a PlayStation 1 title. I don't actually know if it ever received any sequels, but I loved this game because it's so sad. It should. We should do this. We should play this game again somehow. So what you would do is, you'd be playing the game, and then in order to generate new monsters, it was kind of like a Pokemon type game where you would, collect monsters and then battle them against other monsters. But in order to generate monsters in this game, what you do is take other CDs that you have and put them into your PlayStation, and depending on the CD, it would generate a monster for you. And it
that
would
is
always
cool as shit.
It would always be the same monster for all of each CD you had. So you had to constantly talk to your friends, bring your CD collection over. We're playing Monster Rancher. I need all of your dudes or whatever. and then you also had your favorite monsters that you could bring in from CDs. So there was this Chicago album, Chicago the Band album that was Chicago's Greatest Hits that gave me this neat angel type monster that was super good. It was an S-type angel, and I remember
that's such a cool mechanic because
dude, it was awesome.
If you have this one Led Zeppelin CD that you put in there and it gives you this dope ass monster. You're gonna remember that forever. That is so cool. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, you could tell that there were certain CDs where they thought about what it should spit out. It was kind of an in character for them, which was really, really cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
I want to play Monster Rancher. Shit,
Monster Rancher is great. It's fabulous.
According to this article from Game Informer, the original Monster Rancher is getting a re-release in Japan.
What? They get everything cool.
So my favorite weird additive to games was definitely Harvest Moon. So it's always
interesting.
A favorite in my heart. But the game's basically meant to you farm, you do all those things, and that's the game. But for me, it ended up being building these relationships with the people in the town. I mean, when it first came out, you could only be a guy, so I was trying to marry these ladies. And I think it was Friends of Mineral Town, where that was the first time where it mattered who you married. So before that game, I was just going around and, marrying the cute librarian who's nerdy, but my type.
So you married yourself.
Actually, Maria was probably me. Damn it.
Nice.
But I'd married who I thought was the best wife. And then, I went and later in that game, I found out it mattered who you married. So I had to go and, I think I married Karen first, who was
You married Karen?
Yeah, the rough and
fucking
tumble.
Karen.
the rough and tumble outsider who stood on the dock and was sassy. And
that sounds just like Karen. She probably always wanted to see the manager. And
speak to the manager.
Later.
Always wanted those coupons that were expired.
Yeah, this is when she was young and had long hair. This is before she got the cut.
The Karen cut.
The Karen cut. But she all she did was like open the store a little earlier, I think. And so then I realized that had an effect on things. And then you could have a child in the game who gave you a gift regularly. So that was an additive to like desire getting married, because you could avoid it, I guess, in the game and not really do it. But now there were bonuses to doing those things. So that was interesting that was always a piece of the game, but then they made it something that was more integral. No,
integral. It's a
integral.
Combination of intricate and integral.
This thing in my mouth isn't working very well right now. I'm really sorry, guys.
Wow.
Anyway.
It's a weird mechanic of alcohol where it changes.
Yep.
Yeah, the function of the tongue and the brain.
Yep.
So, that was interesting where they actually integrated that more into the game, where it actually mattered who you married and things like that. So they made it more and more a piece of strategy to the game rather than just go out and find who you think is the best wife. So that was pretty cool.
Another one that I wanted to bring out that became pretty ubiquitous in a way is the use of flashlights in games.
Absolutely.
So there have been some, there have been some really cool games out there that have really put flashlights to good use. And I know one of them is Alan Wake.
Yeah.
And I think we have a couple of. I've never played Alan Wake, but I hear it's really.
I've played
it's really good.
Yo, Alan Wake.
Yeah, solid.
As far as like a story that makes you go, what the fuck? And like the gameplay just worked so well because the whole.
Yeah. So can you describe it?
So Alan Wake is basically you're a writer and you go to this weird sleepy town, very much like
Stephen King,
like Twin Peaks, kind of like everything's a little weird. But you find out that there's like these shadow monsters or like people that get infected with shadow stuff. And you have to use your light to kind of fend them off or make them vulnerable, to like bullets or like wacky stuff.
Yeah.
But
this is
the
a very
whole
you game.
It totally. And it's very much like the story itself is based a whole lot around like revealing stuff about yourself. So that kind of plays into the
revealing, bringing things to light. Oh, I like this.
But I mean,
sorry.
Well, but I mean, like from there, I mean, that was a good one. But then they kept doing it, right? Like there were like other games that did that too.
Sure.
Luigi's Mansion,
that was one. Yeah, there was flashlights.
Multiple uses for it. You know, the thing about Alan Wake that was so cool with that flashlight is that was like your lifeline. Outlast did this with the video camera, the night vision thing. Like when you didn't have that, you literally could not survive. So as your batteries ran low, you started. That's one of the few games that can really give me a sense of panic and increase my heart rate just because of the tension that goes into that. Because you can't progress without the flashlight. It's like you're screwed.
Did you ever play Fatal Frame, Will?
I knew you were going to bring this up.
I did not, but I always wanted to.
Okay, this is like my favorite game in the world. I'm not going to lie. Like, I love a lot of games, but Fatal Frame is honestly the franchise I wish would come back in a good way. That is very similar, where I love horror games, right? I adore them. I love horror movies. It's all amazing to me. I love a thrill. But but most of them don't scare me because I guess maybe because I play them a lot or something. I'm not really jump scary easily. But that game, all I had really was a camera to fight these ghosts, you know? And that was a terrifying thought, that I couldn't shoot them, that I couldn't hit them, that I couldn't really fight them other than take a picture. And that was beautiful. That was an amazing game. Gorgeous. I really suggest playing it to anyone.
I also wanted to bring up two games that I played a couple years ago, and I actually need to finish one of them. But Her Story, which, did any of you play Her Story?
No, I didn't.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Her Story is sort of a mystery game. It's almost all FMVs, but basically they have like a 3 hour, maybe 3 3.5 hour movie that's an interrogation of this lady in a police office, but they chop it into 1,000 different pieces and shuffle them up. So it's impossible to tell what comes first, and you sort of just like slowly, you're like, well, she's wearing these clothes, so it's got to be part of this, and you're like slowly putting this puzzle of a video together until you can actually kind of play it in order, and then it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have played that. It was hard. Like,
I really loved that game. I just thought it was.
Isn't that like a mechanic that used to be much bigger than it is now, as far as like actual videos of?
Yeah, FMVs used to be huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the one that Corey
Man and Conquer did it.
Corey Feldman?
Corey Haim.
Corey Haim was in. Oh, Night Trap. Night Trap is what it was called.
Yeah, sure.
That game is so ridiculous. It's so good.
So that was a mechanic that I wanted to shout out from the old school, and that's kind of had a little bit of a resurgence. And I believe there's a Her Story 2 coming out, so watch out for that.
Is it the same the same antagonist?
I don't know if it's the same antagonist. I don't even know if it's the same story at all. I have no idea.
But it's hers.
But it's hers, damn it. And then also a game called Papers, Please, which is basically the whole game is you are a border guard, and your job is just to decide whether or not someone has the proper documentation to move from one country to another. So you're like comparing the info you have to the info that's in front of you, and making decisions about it, which is pretty neat.
That's kind of like a game called Orwell, which I think there's an Orwell too, which is, it's an investigation game, and you have a scene in front of you, and obviously with a name like Orwell, you're already predisposed.
The year is 1984.
You're already
predisposed,
I guess, to doubt what you're seeing and what you're hearing because of the name with Orwell. But you're basically trying to figure out what's going on and what caused a terrorist attack, who did the terrorist attack, and it's basically an investigation game, and I really enjoyed it. It's pretty short.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of a callback to old adventure games, right? Where they would leave like these clues, sort of
kind of like The Room in a way.
Yeah,
sort
interesting.
of.
Yeah, The Room's got some pretty strange puzzles, but none as strange as Katamari.
Oh, Katamari! Talk about being a weird game, dude. Like,
dude.
Like literally being like, we're going to make a game where it's a puzzle game, but you just roll shit up. That's all you do.
Well, it's not really a puzzle game. I don't consider it a puzzle game. I just you're just rolling shit up.
Roll up
man.
the world.
Shit's awesome. I love that game so much.
Well, so I'm wondering, is the mechanic in that game really rolling shit up, or is it that it's like, what am I trying to say?
We don't know.
What are you trying to say?
We're waiting with bated breath.
What I think is really interesting about Katamari on a large scale is that there's only one mechanic.
Yeah, just roll shit up.
Well, so I'm wondering, are there other games where there's one mechanic that's just that interesting that you love it that much?
But I mean, that it's not that the mechanic is that interesting. It's that the characters are so charming, and like the King of all Cosmos is such a dick. And
not on purpose. He means well.
But do not tell him I said that.
He means well. He keeps just ruining the universe.
Kind of.
He went on a rager and ruined the universe. But his son, the prince, is going to fix it. So, but I think it's just very charming, and it's a unique mechanic, and that's what makes those games so good.
Allison,
isn't that kind of like all side scrollers? You're not really doing anything but going to the side
right
and
going to the right. Jump.
Well, yeah, but in that game, you just like...
Isn't that what NASCAR is?
You hit things, they stick
left.
to you,
turn
and
left
you keep going.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like in a side-scroller, there's more... Like, you can jump.
Yeah.
Attack.
You can turn very quickly, and you can twiddle the thumbstick so you go forward at like a fast speed. Yeah.
Tetris. You're just moving the block down. There you go. That's another one.
Move the block, spin the block. Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good example. Pong, sure.
So it's kind of a throwback to old school games where you don't need a lot of very, very old arcade games where you don't need a lot of going on to appreciate what's going on in the game.
You just need the one thing to be
full
good.
circle.
Yep. Full
Did
circle,
we just do
like
a
a
history
planet.
of games in weird mechanics?
We just circled back to the first section. This is
Join
the
us
perfect.
next week for Ian's lecture
Yeah.
on Katamari and you. You only need one thing to feel special about
That's
you.
the thing about this topic. This topic, we could go on for 14 hours. We don't
could.
have that time. We're
We
not
could.
going to put these people to sleep. But, yeah, I'd love to hear what people have to say. So make sure you guys tell us
Please
what's
do.
Tell us some more
cool
weird
that you
Tell
think.
us some more weird shit in games that you like and
Just
don't like.
love or hate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that stuff we hate so much. So
We didn't, but I'm sure there are weird mechanics out there that people do hate.
Oh, sure. No, I focused on the love.
Like dick pics. Nobody likes that mechanic.
I don't
Ugh.
think I've
games
played a
yet?
game where that's a mechanic.
I
But
haven't
okay, man.
A game
Dan,
where
you
that's
haven't
a
played Tinder?
mechanic. Tinder in GTA 6.
Yeah.
That's called being a woman in today's society. So you
It's
guys
sad
wouldn't know
and
it.
true.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that.
GTA 6.
The amount of tallies I can put on that is unfortunate.
Too high.
Too high.
You know, that's interesting. Have we ever had a female protagonist in a GTA game?
No.
No,
No.
it doesn't fit there.
There should be, though. Like,
I
why
mean,
not?
Rockstar.
Why
We
can
had-
a woman
Rockstar.
not
It
beat
doesn't
Well,
some
you
shit
can create
down?
you can create your own in their online.
Oh yeah, in the online stuff you can make your own lady
yeah, but
protagonist.
that's different.
But that's different.
In Red
Yeah.
Dead 2, there's Sadie, who she's not a protagonist, but she's still a badass.
All right, Rockstar. Hashtag time's up.
You've been put on warning from the game.
From the GameBrew, okay? That's serious. I mean, Ninja's
Yeah, we're-
still feeling the sting that I gave him.
Boom. He had to switch
He had to quit Switch. He was
Yeah.
like, "I'm done."
He had to
The
leave
Game Brew
Twitch.
put me
He's
on.
And the
Mixer.
Game Brew has
Yeah.
derailed. Topic is way back
Allison.
there.
Has power.
All right. Well, if there are any game mechanics out there that are weird and wonderful, be sure to shout them out to us at the Game Brew on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Join us on our Discord at bit.ly/discobrew. That's going to be it for us this evening. I do want to mention before we go that this second topic was brought to us by
The letter Q and the number 13.
Questions.
big shout out to Cap'n A, also known as Andrew, for the question for the second half of the show. Thanks, man. We really appreciate it.
Yay!
Thanks for hanging out on our Discord.
Yeah. All right. That's going to be it for us tonight. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Say goodnight, Dan.
Good night, Dan.
Will is Big Bird. Right?
What's happening?
I feel like I'm more like the Oscar.
Ian is the Count.
Ooh, yeah. I like this.
Big Bird?
What am I?
Why am I Big Bird?
I think you're Big Bird.
Can I be Gordon?
I think you'd be Snuffleupagus, Dan, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh, Snuffleupagus.
So I'm a
is
figment
great.
of Will's imagination.
Perfect. And then Chris. I don't know.
Cookie
Chris might be
Monster.
Snuffleupagus.
No, I'm
Cookie Monster.
No, Cookie Monster.
Yes. That's perfect.
Cookie.
I'll be Elmo.
Cookie.
Dan
I don't know what I am, but Elmo sounds fine.
Dan might be Bert and Ernie at the same time.
Hey, Bert.
Ooh, that's a good call.
Wow. Hey, Bert.